Hey, welcome back, everybody. Welcome to this lecture on growing the center and experimenting on the edge, kind of living into this blended ecology of church. In this lecture, I wanted to get a little bit more practical into the nuts and bolts. I know Deep and Wild and Deep Roots, Wild Branches get at the theology, the ecclesiology, go a little bit theoretical in some places. So here's some maybe some practical ways to kind of unpack what's in those books. And when we think about gathering and the gathered church and the scattered church, Antioch and Jerusalem, Romans 11, Deep Roots, Wild Branches. So when we're talking about growing the center, experimenting on the edge, think of growing the center as cultivating a healthy, inherited congregation that's missional, that glorifies God. Think about the little wild branches as the little experiments, these little missional experiments that we start on the edge, and then grafting those things together and doing that simultaneously. And so in Deep Roots, Wild Branches, I talk about these four moves of awakening from apostolic amnesia, awakening churches to their core purpose, their why, their sentness in the world. Future fitting, which refers to kind of restructuring congregations for the blended ecology, reorganizing the structures of the church to allow this kind of experimentation. The cultivating and the grafting stages are actually doing the experiments, starting the things, but keeping them in relationship and grafting them back to that existing tree. And then releasing, that's this open-handed, the hardest thing for leaders to do is not to control or want to manage the thing, but to let go and to let God and to create systems and train and empower and encourage people, but then to trust the Holy Spirit over the whole ecosystem. And the way that I talk about this in the book is through a process of dual transformation. This comes from the business world, where you have transformation A, which is about reinventing today. So think cultivating that inherited congregation. Transformation B, which is about creating tomorrow, the experiments, doing the new thing. Capabilities link, grafting those things together, grafting the new thing and the existing thing, growing the center, experimenting on the edge. And so in transformation A space, we're in that attractional, inherited, gathered analog space. So there we're strengthening the center, tradition to innovation. We're cultivating the existing tree. Jesus gives us that parable in Luke 13 about a tree that's not bearing fruit. The owner of the tree, the field says, tear that thing out of here. It's not bearing fruit. Jesus says, let me have 3 years with it, symbolic of his own ministry to cut and to fertilize and to see if this tree can bear fruit again. And a lot of that work in Transformation A is doing that in the inherited congregation. Transformation B is that emerging, missional, scattered digital stuff. So we're seeding the new things. Think parable, the reckless sower. The sower is just sowing seed everywhere. It's casting it out in all kinds of soils. Anybody who's there from the Seeders Union that day is saying, Jesus, this is a terrible story. Stop. You just don't throw good seed recklessly all over the place. You put it in neat little rows. You do preparatory stuff. You do a soil map. You get it ready so that it can thrive. But Jesus says a good sower is just throwing the seed out everywhere, knows that the seed is unlimited. It's the gospel of Jesus. It's a well that'll never run dry. And we're just trying stuff. We're throwing the seed everywhere. It's landing in all kind of new places. And then that capabilities link is that grafting, where we're taking the new thing and the old thing and we're grafting it. So think Romans 11, the Gentile communities, the existing tree through the matriarchs, patriarchs, Torah, scripture fulfilled in Jesus, now all being grafted together in this new organism called the Church of Jesus. All of that together is a way to think about cultivating the center, growing the center, experimenting on the edge, and that you could use that dual transformation as a framework in your own congregations and ministries to think about kind of doing both of those things simultaneously. My bishop said the time of the professional minister has ended. The time of the missionary pastor has begun. And so hopefully from all your readings from New Begin and studying missional ecclesiology, you see this need, right? That every person, every Christian really, and every pastor on this new missional frontier is just going to have to be just as much missionary as we are a shepherd or a pastor. because people just are not coming to church. Those old methods of popping up a building, putting a sign out front, and inviting people just not working. So we have to be missionary as well. And one of the ways that we try to make this simple is to think about, do like an energy assessment of your congregation. How much of your time and energy and efforts go into the internal stuff of the church, worship and Bible studies and Sunday school and programs? How much are you releasing people to be out in the community, doing that seeding work of cultivating new communities, connecting with new people, building relationships with persons of peace out in the community? Every congregation should move towards shifting where you put about just as much energy into both of those things. So think missionary, think pastor, think inherited congregation, think the emerging things, and putting that much energy. This 50-50 planner, you might find it helpful. I developed this to help leaders and pastors and congregations think about how they use their time. One of these days on you get 7 days a week. We all get the same thing. God gives us 7. One of those is a do no work day, right? That's called Sabbath. Pastors, you should not be working or doing any church-related stuff on that day, just delighting in God and worshiping God. It's a sin to not do that. It's the most broken sin in the clergy and in the church today, not taking Sabbath. But then the days that you have left, maybe you have a family day in there too, or maybe you're a 10-hour-a-week clergy, part-time, like I am, buying co-vocational, working multiple jobs. Maybe you got a 40-hour work week, whatever that is. As a clergy person, sit down with your leadership and do this thing and say, hey, on the 8 to 12 p.m., 12 to 5 p.m. block, if I'm doing meetings at the church and I'm in the office or I'm doing visitations, I'm not going to do anything at 5 to 9, right? You cannot work for the church from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's a side note, though, about what I'm trying to say. But maybe sit down with your congregation and say, hey, on Mondays, I'm going to be in the office handling things, doing what I got to do. Monday afternoons, go do visitations for any people that need that. But on Tuesday at 12 o'clock, I'm going to be at the Moe's Southwest Grill because I'm really making this connection with Adrian, and we're starting a little faith community in his restaurant around burritos and all-you-can-eat chips and salsa. And that's my work for the church, too. My work is not just when I'm sitting in the office or preaching or doing all that stuff, but when I'm out in the community connecting with people. And it gives a way to have the conversation, to be transparent, to kind of plan that together, and then to encourage the whole staff and the whole congregation and the whole laity. If you're like me, you don't have any staff, 0, right? But you have laity that probably are dedicated, and you want to create this 50-50 idea across the whole church. How many hours a week do you give to the church? Is it 5? Is it 2? Is it 10? Can you split that up where you're giving energy to the inherited thing and cultivating the new thing out in the community? I got a new book coming out. It's by the time you probably read this, it will be out by the time you view this, called The 5 Congregational Personality Types. Over 15 years of doing this in inherited congregations, people always ask me, yeah, but my congregation's sick, they're tired, they're unhealthy. How am I going to start fresh expressions of church? How do we do that internal work, that cultivating work in the existing thing to help it bear fruit again? This book is my response to that. It's 15 years of my own practicing, but also kind of procuring the wisdom of practitioners of revitalization all over the country in a lot of diverse contexts. And I encourage you to check this out if you're thinking about, how do I do this in the inherited church? How do I make my church healthy enough and adapt to be able to even do this work in the community? So here's on the other side of that, the experimenting on the edge part of this. And I'll just go through this quick. But this is all drawn out of Luke 10, the missional blueprint that Jesus gives us there for a pre-Christian world, also works for a post-Christian world. And think missional ecclesiology here. Think structure and church and community that forms up around the mission of God as they go out in teams, no heroic solo leaders, 2 by 2. They go out in the power of the Spirit. They pray first. They ask the Lord of the harvest to send workers. They notice the harvest field is plentiful. They notice the laborers are few. Then they go out. They become the answer to their own prayers. They go out, put sneakers on their prayers, and become harvesters. They go out, they travel light, they leave their stuff behind. It's dangerous stuff. There's lambs in the midst of wolves. Travel light, trust God, have faith. Now, a piece of this is the baggage that we bring, right? It's not just the physical stuff, but the theological baggage that we bring and the assumptions that we bring to our community, and this idea that we're going to go in and fix people's problems for them, or the missionary posture here is going in with a curiosity and trust and faith, and it's locating these persons of peace that are called here, persons of peace. Their peace rests on us, our peace rests on them, and we do life with those people. We gather at their table. We eat whatever's set before us. Theological validation for the potluck right here, friends. This is good news. And we do life with them. We build the relationships. We live in their house and we stay, and we build that relationship slowly over time. And then after we do all of that, we cure the sick, proclaim the kingdom, all of that. But the relational work, the posture of vulnerability, we don't have all. We need them. We need the person of peace. They have to welcome us. They have to feed us. They have to invite us into their relational circles. And as we've seen with some of these missionary models across history, where we failed is when we've not followed Jesus' instructions here. We've come in with all the equipment and resources and power, and that's not what Jesus is telling us to do. We don't have anything. We're dependent on the people that we're sent to, which is a different idea. And this experimenting kind of process here, as we're cultivating these new, fresh expressions, understand that this is a different kind of thinking than the caring for the center thinking. The caring and cultivating the center is causal logic. So to use a business analogy here, people use causal logic, managerial thinking, where you got a customer, you'd have a market definition, you segment, you target, you position to reach the customer, right? So you have a strategy and a plan, and it's cause and effect thinking. You got a vision, you're going to do that. Effectual reasoning, which is used by expert entrepreneurs, pioneers, adventurers. You just start with several possibilities. You add and you iterate and you prototype and you try stuff. People start to gather and come around it. As you build and as you iterate, you start to define what it is that you're actually building and creating. And then all these different possibilities flow out of this. This is how we innovate and create new things that people don't even know they need in some ways. So if you think about that managerial thinking, we've got that given goal, right? And we got these means that we're going to use to get to the goal. And entrepreneurial thinking, we got a bunch of means, and we just start praying and putting things together and experimenting and trying this over here. Oh, learning from that. That didn't work. Oh, we failed over here. Let's try that. This is what I see happening, unfolding in Acts, right? It's not that managerial thing. We're just following the Spirit. The Spirit restrains us, Paul, from going into, he has a Macedonian call. Don't go that way, go this way. Peter's like, no, I don't want to eat with Gentiles at their table. And the Spirit gives this picnic basket vision, take and eat and kill, and nothing's unclean, and go with them and make no distinction between them and us. So they're figuring it out. They're iterating. They're trying stuff. They're improvising, following the Spirit as they go along. In that entrepreneurial way, we pull together. I got a person of peace over here. I got a place over here that's letting us meet. I got a team of people wanting to do this. We got these resources over here. And we just build and we create over time. And all these different possibilities kind of emerge as we do that. All of that's what I talk at length about in the books, is this loving first journey where we listen to God, we listen to the community. We start with that. We start with the humility to say, maybe we don't know our community. Maybe I don't have all the answers. Maybe I don't have the one right interpretation of the Bible and everybody else is wrong. Maybe I need to go out and listen to my community and listen to what God is doing. We love and serve people with no agenda. These things are not a bait and switch. You do this and do this to get to church, like end product thinking. Each one of these things is something God calls us to do. It's implicitly good. It's innately good just in itself. Does God want us to listen to people? Yes. And the community and what God's doing? Yes. Is God wanting us to love and serve people, build relationships with them over time, hearing their stories, getting to know each other? And then when it's appropriate, does God want us to share the gospel and offer Christ in non-sketchy and appropriate contextually faithful ways? Yes. Does God want churches to spring up in every nook and cranny of life, communal life in Jesus, spreading all over in every park and every place and every third place and every home? Yes. Do we want to repeat and multiply and do this whole thing again? When one little thing gets up and it's successful and it's great and people are being baptized, we're offering the Lord's Supper and church is formed, then we take a little sub team, we split off, or somebody in that church feels a call to go start another group, and it just kind of multiplies all over the place. And the final thing I'll say is just the importance of the experiment on the edge piece of this. It's all about the person of peace, friends. It's all about praying and locating that person that's opening the space, that's opening the practice, that's saying, hey, come and do life with me. It's Brian, the owner of the tattoo parlor, who says, sure, you can come and worship Jesus in my tattoo parlor. It's Adrian at Moe's Southwest Grill, who makes space for us to meet in his place. It's Karen, the yoga instructor, who says, I got a whole bunch of yoga friends and they like to do yoga. What if we worship Jesus and do yoga with my friends who don't go to church? It's this director of the rehab, where he planted a church called Higher Power Hour in the state rehab in Ocala, who invited us in and said, yes, you can have church here. You can't call it church because we're a state facility, but I know what you're doing because I'm a Christian, and go ahead and do it, but let's call it Higher Power Hour. And we're sharing Jesus and building relationships and worshiping in a state rehab facility. But it's those persons of peace that God connects us to that opens these things, that opens these possibilities. And on the edge, a lot of our work and our activity is focusing on locating those people, joining them, doing life with them, and all these really cool, flourishing little new Christian communities flow out of that. So, hey, thank you all for this, joining in on this lecture. That is growing the center and experimenting on the edge, and may God bless your day.